welcome to the Through Our Eyes podcast that is apparently going from strength to strength.
Yes.
The podcast is something that we do fortnightly-ish to highlight marginalised creators' stories and generally talk about the taboos and the topics that people just never really talk about, and ask those questions that you're dying to ask but you never end up asking because of various reasons. We are recording to put it out onto various podcast places, so the alerts will be silent. You can submit questions for Vaine, our guest today, using channel points if they work. Who knows? But I will pass you over to Paige to tell you a little bit more about the Through Our Eyes project as a whole, and then we'll get on with it.
Alrighty, hello everybody, although you're probably hearing us a good 40 seconds after we actually say stuff, so it's all a little bit complicated on Twitch right now. It's being a little bit broken, but hi, I'm Paige, or Artemis. I created the Through Our Eyes streams back in January. Jesus Christ, it's been a long time. Back in January of this year, to highlight marginalised communities, all different communities, and to learn and to ask those questions that wouldn't normally be asked because they're a little awkward or a little rude or just a little uncomfortable. But if you don't ask, you never learn. So we created the format to be able to actually talk to people. So far, we've had 4 major streams, raised, I think, nearly $7,000 for charity in total so far. Over the last 8 months, which has been absolutely wonderful. And we do have another 3 or 4 streams coming up this year, 4 more big ones. The next one will be Marginalised Genders in September, and in October I will be looking to put together an offshoot. So it's a Through Our Eyes, not for a marginalised community, but for a community that receives a lot of flack. So I'll be speaking to game developers and specifically marginalised game developers about the kind of harassment that a lot of us have or will face, and what we can do to work on that in the future. But yes, it's been wonderful so far, and we've done many podcasts. Unfortunately, I couldn't be on the last one as a lot of things went wrong that week. Everything went a bit fuck up. But I'm back now, and I am very excited to talk to Vaine.
Hi.
So, today we have VainePaine. Hello.
Hey.
Would you like to introduce yourself? Tell us a bit about yourself, where people can find you, pronouns, such forth.
Okay, well, I am VainePaine. I go by many names, one of them being the Harbinger of Chaos, which I think Paige granted me. So I'm like, why does it not surprise me the kind of layout's not working? Chaos. But yeah, no, in all seriousness, you can find me at VainePaine on Twitch. Same on Twitter, Instagram. I really need to get my finger out of my bum hole for other socials, but I'm an old lady and I have many kind of like things to do and not enough spoons, so I'll get there in the end. But it's all on the to-do list. As for pronouns, I am she, her. What else do we need to know? I'm just kind of like, my brain is I'm still in work mode. I'm just like, I don't know how to do the talking thing.
Right, so who are you? What do you do on Twitch and in other places?
Twitch. So yeah, Twitch, I'm a variety streamer, but I'm also a mental health advocate. So one of those streams I do actually dedicate to mental health safe space. I have no alerts, no camera, nice soothing background, soothing music, and we can literally just sit and talk about mental health or any other kind of like stuff you want to. I've seen the days where we've descended into giggles, innuendos, and talking about movies and books. So, you know, anything goes on a Friday. And outside of Twitch, I mostly rant on Twitter these days, I think. I've become a bit of an angry madam since I lost my spoons. More so than normal. I'm a bit feisty anyway. So yeah, I am pretty much someone who will stand their ground for themselves and other people when I have the spoons. And I think that's pretty much what I've been firing across my Twitter recently.
Fair do.
Awesome. I was going to ask something, and then my brain completely left. And
Don't worry, I got it. So why do we have you here with us today, Vaine? What are we talking about today with you?
yes, that was.
It's all right. That's why there's two of us. Together we make one working brain most of the time.
So I'm here today because kind of when you guys initially set up the podcast, I said I'd be quite happy to come and chat about Bi-Erasure because I'm a bi-pan woman, and also about mental health, particularly PTSD, which is what I have alongside depression and generalized anxiety disorder. So yeah, I thought I'd kind of have a gas back to everyone about it.
And just for clarity's sake, what is Bi-Erasure?
So Bi-Erasure, and this also applies to kind of pan individuals as well, is effectively people kind of belittling or kind of disregarding your sexual orientation. And it's effectively it's very similar to homophobia. Bi and panphobia can descend into that, and sometimes it is just kind of complete disregard for who you are as an individual as to your sexual orientation.
And lastly, what's your cat called?
That one is Miso. She doesn't usually cameo on stream, but today she decided she'd have her fill. Sushi is up in the penthouse suite, I believe. Yeah, she's up in the penthouse suite. She's also known as Moo Moo or Chonky McNuggets because she's a bit of a greedy moose.
Asking the real important questions here. Right. So, first question. Tell us your story. Tell us about your experience, your why it's triggered this discussion.
I would probably say, particularly from a bisexual, pansexual point of view, my experience has been kind of mixed. I have to admit. I think that's probably why I was kind of partly keen to discuss that, because kind of on the one hand, there are many people who have just accepted me for who I am. They just go, "Oh, okay, you're bisexual. Oh, you happen to be married to a man. That's fine." And then there's other people that have been quite negative in that regards. And I think I'd rather just kind of speak out and kind of point out that, hey, the and particularly within the LGBT community as well, it's not just outside of it. There's a lot of gatekeeping going on, and I'm sorry, but the oppressed should not become the oppressors. So that's kind of my feelings upon it. We should be, joining together to fight people who want to hate us as a collective. Why are we having these infights? It confuses me somewhat, because for me, if kind of someone says they are who they are, I kind of go, okay, cool. Can I ask you questions, or do you want me to go and learn elsewhere? There's a Google. So I don't know. Maybe I'm just naive in that regard, where I go, well, I accept people. Why can't you?
So what kind of things do people say either in or out of the LGBT plus community? What kind of things will you hear with Bi-Erasure? Just in case anyone goes, oh shit, I've said that,
The first one that kind of comes to mind is spicy straight. Now that is quite grim as a term, as far as I'm concerned. I'm neither straight nor homosexual. I'm, somewhere on the spectrum in between. And just kind of like, oh, you're kind of names like, oh, you're spicy straight. Oh, you're greedy. Oh, you're on the path to being gay. It's just like, no.
Yeah, it's not snakes and ladders. You can't just, yay, I'm gay now.
Yeah. It's like, ooh, I mean, some people do
You get a
kind of
sticker.
go through kind of like, their life experiences going, am I straight? Oh no, I think I'm bisexual, and they may end up coming out as gay afterwards, but that's their journey. It's not for anyone else to decide or label or pigeonhole. So yeah. But yeah, spicy straight. Ugh.
So a lot of it is just people essentially saying it's either a stepping stone to finishing a journey, when actually no, it can just be the journey itself, or just because a lot of the things I hear, because I identify as pansexual, but for a lot of my life I identified as bi, and the one thing I always heard was just sort of like, oh, you're just greedy, or it's like, oh, you're not monogamous, you just cheat, don't you? It's like, that's not.
You've got me pegged. It's just like
mine's you just can't decide.
Oh yes,
that's another one. You're a fence sitter. You're just waiting until you realise the truth, and it's like,
you just need good dick.
Yes, please show me the way.
Yeah.
Like, do you know where I can find one? Because it's definitely not with you.
Yeah. It's like, no, I'm bi. I'm happy with good dick or good pussy. Any of it's fine. Like.
Yeah, like for me. I remember kind of like being asked by someone. It's kind of like, oh, what's the thing for you? What's the attraction? I just kind of went, the person.
Yeah.
So for me, it's not. I just like, why does it have to be one end or the other end of the spectrum? Why can't it be somewhere in between?
So, what was your experience when you first realised that you were bi-pan?
I was probably somewhat closeted initially, gotta admit. I mean, I didn't come out to my mother until I was about 27, and I'm 35 in a couple of weeks. So it's just like, but I probably didn't realize till I was about 16 or so. Because at one point I honestly thought I must have been ace up until I was about 14, and then I suddenly went, oh, hang on a minute, there's, I've said this before, I think on the other 3 hours not podcast, the event, where I was kind of like, who is this beautiful specimen of a man? And then like, a couple of years later I was just like, hang on. It's just like, so yeah, I think I was kind of fairly closeted for a little while, and then I went to uni and kind of started to meet other people in the LGBT community. Joined my uni's LGBT society and kind of started to learn a bit more about kind of like, who they are as people and how they kind of had navigated their lives up to that point, and then kind of like exploring more about myself as well. So yeah, I would probably say I was a late bloomer, but we don't all necessarily kind of come out the gate as hormonal teenagers going, yes, this is me. So
to be fair, that was a similar experience for myself. Like, it wasn't until uni that I would admit to it, but that's a different situation. But I think it's that experience of being exposed to a wider range of people that tends to create a environment for people to feel like they can actually embrace their feelings or explore their feelings and express themselves a bit better.
Yeah, and I know kind of like not necessarily for myself, because I was actually quite independent from my mother anyway. I left home kind of like when I was 17, so for me, I didn't necessarily have kind of like the boundaries of kind of wondering what my family would think, or kind of being scared to come out to my family in that sense, but more as you say, being exposed to other people, where I'm from originally. It's quite a small town mentality, so kind of like I had to go to a city to kind of like find new minds to kind of go, oh, hang on a minute, you don't have to be this way, you can actually be that. oh, there are now many options in which for me to explore who I am. So yeah, it's quite an eye opener going from a small town to a city uni, but I wouldn't have had it any other way.
Yeah.
So your experience with meeting a wider LGBTQIA community was a positive one.
Mm-hmm. Yes, to a point. There were some kind of like underlying politics initially when I first joined, even to the point where there was a very kind of visible split between kind of people who presented as femme and people who presented as masculine. And I was the odd one out who would go and sit with the masculine people and then just kind of go, I was like, this is strange. Luckily things did change, but I was just kind of like, what's this about? And they were like, oh, don't get involved with the politics over there. I was like, oh, okay. So that was, I think that was my first taste of kind of understanding politics within the LGBTQIA plus community as well. I was kind of like, why is everyone separate? I don't understand this. Like, we're supposed to be a rainbow family. What's this? So I was very confused.
So when it came to experience of Bi-Erasure and that experience, where did that come from for you?
Actually, initially it was joining that society, weirdly enough. So I actually remember it quite vividly. So again, because there was kind of a very visible gender divide, I remember kind of like we all met at the initial meeting point and we were walking down to kind of go and have a social. And I just remember the entire time walking down, I just constantly got from the group of lesbians that I was walking with how bi women can't be trusted, we're disease spreaders, we're kind of like this, we're that. And I literally kind of like, I had a person either side of me and I was just like, I literally can't tell you who I am. You've literally just called me everything. And that was really upsetting. I was just like, and this is why I hang with the boys. Because of this. That was my first proper experience of hanging with them, and they literally erased me before my very eyes. Because they just presumed I was a lesbian.
Right.
So going on from that, what have been your other experiences with various groups throughout your life since that?
I think that was probably like for me directly aimed at me, my lowest point in terms of erasure. I think kind of like after that point I was like, right, okay, there are certain individuals I will keep myself distanced from, but I won't let it completely cloud my judgment of everyone. As I kind of said before, it's been a bit mixed because for some people it would just be kind of like you would you'd sit down, you'd have a chat, and then you kind of get to the conversation of, oh, so what's your orientation? And I'd literally just sit there and I go guess, because I would either be pigeonholed into the straight box or the lesbian box. I was never anywhere any other option to anyone else, and I was just like, that's why I just play the game. And it was like, oh, you're straight, oh, you're a lesbian. And when I go, I'm neither, they're like, huh? It's like, I'm like, at the time I was in a relationship with a man, they're like, oh, so you just like men then? I'm like, no. No.
Am I just like this one right now? Like,
yeah, this is the one for me now. Yeah. Everyone else can go away. But yeah, I think time has kind of progressed a little bit. People are becoming a lot more aware of kind of like things around them, people around them, and kind of acknowledging other people's orientation rather than presuming. But yeah, I wouldn't say we're necessarily quite there. So, but maybe I'm a little bit more. I don't want to say abrasive when it comes to people kind of like chatting shit about it, but I will just clap back immediately, and I try not to let it faze me anymore. So I tend not to notice it as much nowadays, if that makes sense. Because I am immediately just like, oh no, none of this shit. We're not having that today.
It reminds me that the TV show The Boys actually did. It didn't tackle Bi-Erasure, but it did actually bring it up in one of the episodes, which I thought was quite good, because one of the characters there is bisexual. But when that got leaked to the public and could affect her image, they said that she was a strong, proud lesbian because it reflected the masculine and feminine sides of a relationship. So they made one of them dress very feminine and made one of them dress very masculine because they were like, oh, the more straight it looks, the more acceptable it is. And it's like, that's, oh my God. I mean, they've hit the nail on the head of why some people have a problem with it. But
yeah, I completely forgot because I mean, we all know I have a brain like a sieve. Me too. But yeah, that whole kind of that story arc with Maven and Maven's partner, that was quite interesting actually. And I also quite thinking along a similar vein actually, was quite happy with the subtle. I hope most people have seen Loki before I mention the subtle drop in about bisexuality in Loki.
I haven't seen it yet, but it's pretty much impossible to escape from. Plus, I mean, let's face it, in mythology, Loki had a fucking tug of war game with his penis and a goat. So whatever Loki goes for does not surprise me at all.
I mean, to be fair, Loki is pretty much the embodiment of all of that in general.
Just sexuality in general.
Yeah.
Wherever they want to go.
If there was a god that all bisexual and pan people would look up to, it would be Loki, because that was basically Loki's mythos. It was fluid and
I just got hiccups. Sorry. There's another Norse mythology story where Thor's hammer gets stolen, and they need to go and get it back from the people that took it. And so they dressed up both Thor and Loki as women, but Thor was just Thor in a dress, and Loki is obviously able to shift, and so became a very beautiful woman. And they both went, and apparently it still worked because they got the hammer back and beat everyone else to death. But the fact that Loki has always been very sort of gender fluid and like very fluid with sexuality in all of the stories, and I don't think it was ever mocked or anything like that. It was a bit more of a, oh, that Loki, you know, always doing random shit and, you know, becoming a woman for a day because they felt like it. And it's like, there you go. Like,
I mean,
it was just quite nice, particularly from a kind of like mainstream Marvel Disney perspective, for that to actually have been included. But I did then engage in a bit of a kind of argument with idiots on Twitter, funnily enough, about this. To which I was labelled a misandrist, which I was just like, oh yeah, clearly I hate my husband. But yeah, I was just like, so you don't like people having representation? Please go away.
yeah.
So, with this in mind, and the fact that, I mean, from my experience personally, and I'm pretty sure from both of yours, it's still an issue. It's still a massive issue. Bi-Erasure is common in both straight and LGBT groups, and we're quite often subject to it and the assumptions that go along with it. What do you think can be done to make moves towards change?
Yeah, well, that's like the £100 question. I mean, first and foremost, talking about it. I think we can only really kind of enlighten people to kind of our experiences by talking about them. Otherwise, I'm not kind of totally sure off the top of my head, because you know, to talk to people, you have to have people who are willing to engage. But how do you educate people who don't want to learn, I think, is kind of my real question.
I think you put it in the media they consume. It's probably one of the easiest ways to do it, is start drip feeding it and just keep putting it in until it, because there's been a lot of things over the years, from TV shows, just, people had problems with there being color TV shows when it used to be black and white because it was a radical change. But eventually everyone got used to it, and now nobody gives a shit for black and white TV, well, majority wise. But I think it's a similar idea. A lot of the people that don't really want to know or don't really want to care probably would understand a little bit more if it was sort of just in their media, and once they got over their fake outrage about it, then it would just be there, and they could just see it, or they couldn't.
But that's really what's making all of the children gay.
No, the fact they aren't being murdered for being gay anymore is what's making the children. No, actually, they were already gay. Now they can just talk about it publicly. I had this chat with my dad the other day, actually, because my dad thinks very much like me and agrees with a lot of things. So we were just talking about it. It's just like, the reason we keep seeing things as so much darker and things like so much more radical than they are is because we can hear about news so much faster. It used to take weeks to get a fucking pigeon from one side of the earth to the other side with a letter that said, "We need you," and it's like, "Oh, that was 2 weeks ago, fuck it." Like, now if somebody stubs their foot in Egypt, I can hear about it 3 seconds later on Twitter in England. Like, we can find out these things so much more. But it also has come along with a lot more stories of, other people, and a lot more understanding that there are other people in the world, and a lot more people like you. Like, the phrase 1 in a million sounds like a lot, but then you think there's 7.7 billion people in the world, and suddenly that's not so many people different than you. So I think it's
that was a blip on your...
Twitch is twitching.
Is it?
Twitch is twitching. I don't know what's going on here, but
that was...
it might be
that was just you.
Weird. Woo! That's okay. That's all right. I probably went funny in my brain anyway, so. Either way, the amount of information we can get across very quickly is both a blessing and a curse in terms of finding more people like us, but also finding more people that hate that.
Yeah.
But perhaps using that to actually just keep pushing it in front of people's faces until it's not a surprise anymore is a good thing to do. Like, Loki got some flack for not making it a far more bold in your face, here is a bi or pansexual person, but maybe actually drip feeding it and then growing out next season and having a more explicit storyline is a better way to sort of just immerse people gently before they start freaking out.
Anything to add, Vaine?
I was just going to say, kind of like, in terms of like, say, like the Loki piece with Marvel, it's kind of neither, at least for me, it was neither here nor there whether it was kind of over or covert. I was just quite happy that it was there, and that Kate Herron, the director, she also kind of went, well, I wanted it in because I am bi myself. For me, that was kind of quite nice as a bisexual person. But then you're not going to please all of the people all the time, and I know some people are going to go, it didn't go far enough, but it's like, he doesn't need to be necessarily screwing someone on, on the floor or whatever for it to be.
I mean, I don't think anyone would complain with seeing Tom Hiddleston there.
But still, you know what I mean? Just kind of like, it doesn't always need to be kind of very gratuitous in your face for it to still have some impact.
But that's the key, isn't it? Is representation is something that a lot of, especially in the LGBTQIA and disabled communities, having representation is something that it doesn't have to be majorly OTT in your face kind of representation. It just needs to be there, because it doesn't have to be even the main story, or the it can be mentioned in passing. It's just there. It's recognizing that these individuals are real people and exist, and it's everyone in a world or a universe created for these media is forms is not just one type of person all the way through.
What do you mean? I thought that was meant to be the perfect representation of cis-het white males.
Oh yeah, sorry. I forgot
They're the only
that was our...
consumers of media. How dare you?
Honestly, just stop making all your teams look like copy pastes of each other. Just inject just a little bit of different in there. And the people that make the argument of, oh, well, they chose the best people for the job, it's like, no, you just didn't look enough.
I saw that
Yeah.
yesterday, and I was just like, no.
And
I don't have
I
the
understand
screen.
that, yes, those people are probably very good, but you obviously didn't look far enough afield to actually find anyone else. And yeah, no, you don't want to say, our targets say we need one person with a vagina, let's go find them. But actually, if your team has nobody with a vagina or anything, maybe you should go looking. Maybe it is okay to actually tick some boxes, as it were, if you're actually making sure that those people are represented. Maybe if that's where you need to start, that's where you need to start. But you have to...
Sorry, now I have this image of someone in an interview going, excuse me, could you just show us your vagina, please? And it's just like, excuse me, bye.
That's what you're casting for, really.
The thing is, one of the things that annoys me as someone who is looking for that kind of representation, in the sense of that I want to see strong femme presenting people in my industry, in science, in media, in main storylines. I want to see disabled people in those storylines. I want to see LGBTQIA people in those storylines. It annoys the hell out of me that to get there, our entire premise is we have a certain percentage quota to fill and we must tick these boxes. Do you have this? The only reason we're hiring you is because you are gay. It's
exactly, like my point about ticking boxes isn't just find those people. It's like if you've just got white cis het people, maybe actually look for a different kind of person and then see if they fit your job. Don't just hire that person because they fit the job and it's easy. Like, yes, you do sometimes have to go looking for the type of person you want, and you will find them if you actually bloody look. You shouldn't just be hiring people just because they fit your diversity quota.
Yeah, in that respect, it's definitely unconscious bias heavily at play. So,
see, something that came up last podcast that I feel really hits the nail on the head is the point of the reason that there's not a lot of diversity, for example, in like the game industry and similar industries, is because a lot of those marginalized groups actually eliminate themselves from the applications. They've not got the same confidence that a straight het male has got when looking at applications. So they will go, here's 4 points, I only tick 2 of them, I won't apply. Well, the others will go, I've only got 2 of them, that's enough.
To have the bollocks of a cis het white man.
Yeah, I did actually apply that recently to 2 applications. Before I was just like, right, no, they do this, I'm going to give it a go. And lo and behold, in my day job, I got a promotion. So I was just like, right, awesome.
Yeah, and it's definitely off a little bit off topic for Bi-Erasure and what we're talking about. But the amount of people that will have their like applications thrown out because they have a non-white sounding name and things like that, and the minute they change it to just be like Jack Smith, media interviews, it's just like, what that isn't even unconscious bias, that's just bias.
Yeah, that's full bias.
That is just bias. And the people that require like photos sent, it's like, excuse me, I'm trying to work on a computer, you don't need my picture. I know there's a fucking like I don't even remember, Hollister in the city where I live, and they require you to send a photo to make sure you're like pretty enough to work at the front, and if not, you are made to work warehouse. So yeah, they will judge you on your size, weight, bust, and like smile. without any of your other qualifications first, and if you do not make it, you have to work at night shift or in the warehouse, and that goes for Abercrombie and Fitch in the US as well.
Yeah, they're both
How is
those
that still
brands are
done?
linked, I think.
Yeah. Abercrombie owns Hollister, but
Yeah, that
Jesus
was
Christ.
it.
Honestly,
But,
they really should not be hiring on that grounds, because the CEO would have been fired instantly. Jesus Christ.
I can kind of
Most square
understand
person.
the application of that in the sense of we're looking for a specific type of person that is someone who is actually going to wear our stuff, or use our stuff, or is like a horse racer or a cricketer, or I don't know who wears Abercrombie and Fitch at this point, but you know what I mean, like a sporty kind of person. I can understand if they were going for that, but the idea that you're being judged on your looks.
The thing is, I don't even understand that, because you're just saying that we don't have any accessible sizes, we don't allow any accessibility. Like, you got a wheelchair, fuck off. Like, you have to be a supermodel to stack fucking shelves. To, like, be folding t-shirts out on the shop floor, you need to have passed an appearance check. And I only know this because somebody I worked with at Game when I worked there used to be one of their warehouse stackers, because he wasn't cute enough to work the shop floor.
wow.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're going a bit off topic here. Oh god. Right. So, what do you wish others knew about Bi-Erasure and how it affects mental health?
Just literally how it affects people's mental health. Like, how would you as an individual want to feel if someone basically minimized who you are as a person? How do you think it would make you feel? Pretty shitty, right? You feel pretty shitty. Your brain pixies, as I tend to term it. That's a phrase I stole, by the way. Your brain pixies then start having a party and just going, yeah, everyone thinks negative shit about you. This is great. We're going to catastrophize everything. So then you end up in a bit of a mental shithole and feeling like you need to be a bed burrito for however many days until you finally find the spoons to pick your ass back up again. I'm probably old enough and ugly enough and have been through sufficient enough shit to be able to bat that off a little bit better than others may. But that's just because, as I kind of said before, I'm a bit of a feisty little thing. If I have the spoons, I'll bite back and tell people to sod off. But as a whole, it's not nice to be basically told in my eyes, you don't exist. So, yeah.
No, I mean, that's at the end of the day, that's all anyone's trying to get to, really, is a point where they don't get made to feel inferior and shit and have mental health issues develop from years of being told that they're not acceptable. It's
because that is what it boils down to. It's a lack of acceptance for who you are. But what makes someone who is bi or pan any less accepted than someone who is, fits within a neat box? We have our own box. We just tend to bounce around the sides a lot.
I do wonder if it maybe some of it comes from sort of fetishization and the porn industry, where it's seen as and I use this with big air quotes, exotic to be bisexual. Because
that's another one as well. You do it just to turn men on. It's like, yep, that's how I like to live my life. I just want to turn all of the straight men's on.
Yes. While I'm with this really attractive young lady, I'm totally thinking about your dick.
Yes. Of which you only have one, and there's two of us, so try and figure that out, would you? Like, honestly, it's... I get how it's exciting, but it's exciting to a 15-year-old, like, oh, I could have two women that kind of want to kiss each other. Like, sure, that's cute. Like, oh, if that's what you want to do, you're nice, you'll get...
Oh, unfortunately, Paige has snapped out there.
Yeah,
And
Mid rant.
I'm back. Yeah, my internet died.
Oh,
Talking about pornography. It's...
well. So anyway, how about that porn?
yeah.
Okay, while Paige sorts out internet issues, we will move on to just try to stabilize the internet. I'm telling you, it's one of those days. It's one of those days. I wonder whether it's a scenario of having your cake and eating it, where people who are bi aren't seen as legit because it's like, but you're with someone of the opposite gender. How does that work? Yeah, I mean, I know from my experience that a lot of the assumptions have been based around kind of that feeling that I'm just greedy and wanting to have everything, and that one person isn't enough for me, and it's like, well, you shouldn't be shaming people for polyamory. That's their choice. That's nothing to do with, you or your opinions of whether or not it is right and proper to have two people in a relationship, and one of them is a man and one of them is a woman.
Yeah, I think kind of the concept of bisexuality and pansexuality usually does get conflated with ethical non-monogamy and polyamory. And if consenting adults conduct their relationship in that manner, that's their choice. It's no one else's business. Just because people happen to be bisexual or pansexual does not mean that they cannot be monogamous. I think that's the other thing that really pees me off, is that literally the assumption is, so you sleep around a lot. No. It's like, what part of I'm in a monogamous relationship are you not understanding?
Yeah.
Just because, I happen to be attracted to other people as well. It's like, oh no, I cannot use my eyeballs.
Well, it's the same. I mean, no one would bat an eyelid if it was a straight white male looking at other women while they're in a monogamous relationship.
Yeah.
But the idea that other people have attraction to like, God forbid.
Rude.
I mean, one dick has got to be enough for everyone, right?
Sorry, my brain went elsewhere. It's just like, let's not. No, stop, brain, not today.
Sorry, I was going straight there, so it's all good.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
I was gonna say, you got more than one hole.
How many orifices?
Oh God, right. But yeah, so there is that assumption that pansexuality comes along with unfaithfulness, polyamory, a love for threesomes.
Yes, apparently. I mean, in my nearly 35 years, I have not experienced one, but here we are. Apparently, can't get enough.
The problem is that you haven't been putting out enough applications.
God damn it.
Yes.
That's where I've gone wrong.
Yes, with the metaphorical bollocks of a cis white man, of course.
Yes.
You need to just say that you've had 5 partners at once. All of them at the same. You need to just lie on your application. Just really send it up there.
What's the new thing on dating apps now? Looking for unicorn. And I'm like,
yeah. I mean, that's been there for a while.
Blade Runner. Fuck off.
To be fair, that has been a thing for a very long time.
Oh right, okay. I just because I've never come across it before until someone mentioned it to me. And I'm just like,
very,
unicorn.
very often, looking for a unicorn is advertising for
Additional partner.
an additional partner that is willing to partake in both partners into a monogamous couple otherwise.
Sorry, I've just said who is looking for Scotland's national animal. Apparently a lot of people.
But to be fair, on a very slight tangent in association with this, I'm going to tell a story while we try and while away time for Paige to sort her stuff out.
Sorry, I don't think my camera's coming back at the minute. Essentially, my internet service provider is having like hundreds of reports of just not working.
Oh, okay.
But I seem to be a lot more steady just using audio, so
Okay.
You'll just have to look at this tiny picture of me instead.
Well, I'm going to tell a story anyway.
Go ahead.
My first same-sex relationship actually was the result of me going, fuck it, I'm going to apply white guy logic and confidence. Like, the reason that I ended up having that opportunity was because I did exactly what a straight white guy would have done. And although, I mean, I'd waited years and never had any interest whatsoever, and the only reason I got there was because I did use the having the bollocks of a white straight guy.
Did you give them back when you were done?
No, I mounted them on my wall.
There you go.
Just like a really, really sad fucking puppy. Just one of those ones with the giant jowls.
Bulldog.
That's the one.
Oh, God. Anyway, so moving more onto the mental health side of things. Now, tell us about your experience with mental health, and you mentioned PTSD. What's your story with that?
So PTSD, excuse me, has probably always been my underlying diagnosis, but I didn't know that for certain until I actually had, I forget psychologist or psychiatrist, which of the two basically just went, this is, you have the thing. So kind of like, I'm not going to go into great detail as to why I have post-traumatic stress disorder, but I do come under what's known as complex post-traumatic stress disorder. So I don't have one kind of singular life event that has caused it. I've kind of had lots of things occur over time, and then basically I had one incident that just, was the straw that broke the camel's back, and then my brain just went. That was it. But yeah, I basically had a bit of a shitty childhood, and I was quite depressed. And just as a trigger warning, right now I was quite suicidal as well at around about between 14 and 16. Thankfully, I don't have any ideation anymore. That's, something that I've been quite fortunate with. But yeah, kind of depression led into anxiety. And over the years, I've had multiple iterations of kind of counseling, CBT therapy, and kind of also because, particularly as a student, if you move from area, you end up potentially coming under different kind of like care areas. In the UK, you're under the NHS, so then you're transferred out of one referral, you then have to go and apply for another, and just I didn't end up kind of having psychotherapy and things. And then when I was at uni, basically, it was my housemate at the time who was very abusive, very manipulative, and quite often gaslit me and all sorts, which was what kind of tipped me over the edge finally. So yeah, eventually kind of like I moved down to London where I am now. And it was actually my CBT therapist at that time. And I was quite lucky. I had quite a good bond with him. No, I will say this just for people who have never had therapy before or are struggling with a therapist. If you're finding that the therapist is not working for you, by all means ask for a new one. If you don't gel with them, you don't gel with them. You're not necessarily going to actually get anything out of the treatment. And it's nothing personal. It's a professional thing. You're there to receive a treatment. You need the individual who will help you, have that treatment effectively. So yeah, I had quite a good relationship with the CBT therapist. He actually kind of went, CBT is only going to help you so far. I actually think you've got PTSD. So when we've finished these sessions, go back to your GP and tell your GP that you need referral for psychotherapy. But you need them to diagnose you with the PTSD. I can't give you an official diagnosis, but this is my suspicion. So yeah, to be honest, if it wasn't for him and me taking his advice on board, I probably would still have just been thinking, do I have PTSD? Because the misconception with PTSD is that people think that it's a singular event and it's usually only kind of like military veterans that get it because they've been to war zones, they have bullets whizzing past them, explosions. Some of them have become permanently disabled because of various injuries that they picked up, and that's probably the one thing that will be a red rag to a bull with me, is if someone goes, well, you've never been to a war zone. I'm like, someone actually did it in an Among Us match once and we all voted them off.
God, I remember that.
I was the imposter. That wasn't the point.
That was the first time I met you, and I was like, "Whoa, that went somewhere."
Yeah, so I do actually have memory loss, just for context. So I'd actually forgotten where I was, and when they asked me where I was just like, I have genuinely forgotten, and they were just like, "Why?" So I was like, "Well, I have PTSD. I forget quite easily." And then they were like, "Oh, you've never been to a war zone." So we were all just like, "Fuck off."
Yeah, it was quite nice that the entire match did come to go, fuck you, dude. Get out.
Literally everyone went, no. It's just like dead face, no, off they fuck. I was just like, oh, thank you. But yeah, it's PTSD and just mental health in general, regardless of what the diagnosis is, can be quite challenging because, again, it's a lot of people's assumptions and misconceptions that they try and place upon you rather than trying to learn about how you as an individual navigate this, because me with PTSD and someone else with PTSD can have two very different ways that our symptoms express themselves. So yeah, it's kind of similar to kind of like the Bi- and Pan-Erasure. It's everyone kind of making assumptions and not listening or being willing to listen initially that kind of really can set things off.
So once you had your therapy and stuff, what motivated you towards your strong focus in mental health and in your streaming? Like what was it that made you want to incorporate that into your streaming?
Kind of when I first started streaming, I literally kind of went, what is kind of quite a sort of like large portion of my life? What is a large portion of kind of my experiences now? Because I've not finished treatment. I'm in the middle of treatment at the moment, which is why my spoons are up and down. I can explain more about that, the therapy that I'm undergoing in a bit. But I did just kind of go, how can I help other people understand that they're not alone? You can be a functional human being, regardless of what your mental health is. And it's okay to not be okay. You can have your bad days as long as you kind of reach a point where you're able to pick yourself back up. If you're not, then you need to go and get some assistance. And just kind of just trying to have that space where people feel more comfortable talking about it Because for some people, just hearing the conversations, or you know, not even necessarily being active in them, but just the lurking, like, you know, that could probably help them go, oh, maybe I need to go and have a chat with my doctor. I've had kind of people come into those streams on occasion who have literally never been to any of my other streams. Literally, they've just come straight in because I've kind of got like the mental health tag, or, you know, a couple of other bits. And, you know, if I can signpost them somewhere to go and get the assistance that they need, that, in a selfish way, that makes me feel better, because I know that I've helped someone else help themselves. So kind of it's a bit of a, I suppose in a way it is a bit of a give and a take situation, but it's for me kind of like feeling happy and helpful is me helping other people, you know, get help and assistance. So yeah.
I kind of am struggling to figure out if like Paige wants to jump in at any point. Mainly because obviously I now can't see her. But
I'm still here. I'm just trying to stop the internet. Well, it's Virgin that's freaking out. But I'm good at the moment. Don't worry.
Okay. Okay. Well, let me know if you.
You're all good. Don't you worry.
Okay. Right. So, what would you like others to know about mental health, the treatment, and dealing with it day to day, especially as you're going through treatment yourself right now?
It's like, where could there's so many places I could go with this. I think one thing that's very important for people to know, and some people don't necessarily understand, I'll be honest, it took for someone to point this out to me, but having a long-term mental health condition is actually a disability. Now, a lot of people just see the concept of disability as, you know, someone who has mobility issues, needs physical assistance, and kind of like that also descends in kind of like the, oh, you know, you're only disabled if it's visible type of thing. But it for those in the UK is actually defined under the Equality Act 2010. So yeah, a long-term mental health condition that exists for 12 months or longer is a disability. And it took me a few years for me to actually know that and understand it and take that on board, because yeah, I just went, but it's just my brain. So
I feel that.
like,
I mean, a lot of people in our position in general, and especially in the Through Our Eyes community, are I feel long-term sufferers of mental health or chronic illness or whatever it is that ails them in that sense. And quite often it's a case of that it's taken years and years and years for the knowledge to get to them that, yeah, this is legitimate, this is like, you know, it is actually a disability. It's something that isn't just your brain being your brain. It is genuinely something that you can get help with. It is something that you can seek and pursue help with, and you are entitled to that help. Which I know for me that I've had mental health issues for my entire life, and it took until, you know, recently, like several years ago, for me to actually end up seeking help with it. Because so often, especially in media and online, it is kind of perpetuated that it's not acceptable to to acknowledge that we have these issues and put it out there.
It's almost kind of like breaking the initial taboo. It's like saying, hi, I have mental health issues is seen as a bad thing. But the easiest way to kind of explain it is, if you broke your ankle, you wouldn't leave your ankle like unattended and you would seek medical attention. Why would you not do that for your mental health issues? Whether it's kind of, in your noggin, or, physically in the rest of your body, it doesn't make any difference. It still ails you, and you can find a suitable way to help yourself heal. You may not be cured, but that's something that, as part of your journey, you will need to come to terms with and accept. And that's something I've taken a long time to learn myself. I will never be cured of mental health problems. I will just have more tools in my arsenal in order to cope with it and, potentially process out the trauma, which then results in my emotional dysregulation. But that doesn't stop you from being you and functional.
Mental health, I think, is very interesting, because although it is less stigmatized now than it used to be, it's now compounded upon by other things that are stigmatized. So I'm thinking largely of classism. It's a lot more, it's a lot less acceptable if you are poor to have ill mental health, because that means you're just lazy. And you also can't mention it at work because you are easily replaceable and could be fired. So you have to keep saying everything's okay, but being poor is incredibly fucking stressful when everything around you relies on money. And so it makes the marginalised even more marginalised. But you'll also find it's incredibly difficult to be a black person and live with mental health issues, because you'll be painted with a bunch of different brushes, and you'll get the old stigmas of things like violence applied upon you despite them never having been attributed to you before. And I've seen this in friends who are diagnosed with mental health issues, and it's just like, oh no, it's just what people are like. And it's like, that's just racism now, and ableism. It gets compounded by so many other things, because while mental health itself has become more acceptable, and John's just said what I was about to say, if you are rich or influential, so if you're an actor or a musician or something, like, musicians are deified if they live with mental health issues, especially, and it's horrible to say this, if they die from them. Like, the amount of people, like the 27 Club is horrible, but there's loads of musicians who have died around the age of 27 by suicide because of ill mental health, and they are deified as gods who died too early. And it's like, no, they were sick and no one would help. Like,
I mean,
those are people
Kurt
that
Cobain is a prime example of this.
Yeah.
Like, his entire music demonstrates his struggle with mental health, and the unfortunate result of that has been like, there's like conspiracy theories around it. There's it's glorified, it's added to the image. It's like, I mean, being basically the embodiment of the grunge movement, it's only added and sensationalized it.
Yeah.
Especially in the 90s.
Well, Amy Winehouse as well. One of her most famous songs was Rehab, where she was talking about how she didn't want to go back and how her family was worried about her. And most, the lyrics in that song are just about how fucked up everything is for her. But it became a club bop that 13-year-olds knew. When, like, her entire life, it was never a secret that she was a drug addict and an alcohol addict. But she was making money, so suddenly it was acceptable. And instead she died a young woman. It absolutely baffles me, because it then goes along with classism. These musicians weren't born into rich families, as far as I'm aware. but as soon as they started making money, it became popular for them to be tragic and broken, and that's how they had to remain until the point they killed themselves or overdosed accidentally.
Yeah, I think that's kind of a double-edged sword, particularly, say, if you're taking artists into consideration, because particularly if they reach a certain level of success, they have kind of people that, you know, take their cut of, you know, their art. So they're being leached upon anyway by people who are taking advantage of their mental health. But then you've also got the glamorization of, oh, ill mental health means that you're more creative, and it's just like,
yes,
yeah, great, life is shit, therefore I will punt out more art for you to benefit from.
Yeah, that in fact one of my favorite sort of, there's a song called Rock and Roll Nerd by Tim Minchin, which is amazing, and it's just talking about this whole background in, you know, he doesn't have anything horrible to say, so he sits there and imagines his wife is dead, but then she comes home and she's ruined it again, and it's you know, it's meant to be very funny, like he can't breathe because his life's actually okay and he doesn't have any mental illnesses, so how is he ever going to succeed? And it's a very good parody song on how the industry does look at artists. And I tell you what, the one that is actually very timely and the one that I fucking have something to say about the minute is Britney Spears. Fucking hashtag free Britney. Free that poor fucking woman. There, even if she is mentally ill, she needs to be able to choose her own life. And
even if she's mentally ill, she could, as long as she's lucid, she can make her own decisions.
Yeah, and at the same time, even if she isn't, if she wasn't, she wouldn't be as lucid as she is to be able to actually start fighting back against this, and the help would be needed. This is a woman just being put upon for money by all of her family acting like fucking vultures. And and again, like, yes, she legitimately did suffer from a traumatic mental breakdown, but she should have got help, not fucking just stolen from.
Yeah.
And yeah, it makes me really sad to see how certain aspects, I think this comes along with Bi-Erasure as well, certain aspects of these things have become more acceptable, more understood, so now we have to pick them apart in other ways.
Yeah.
Like, in general, do you think a lot of our beliefs and stigmas of mental health is in part due to how we and the media have sensationalized it in celebrities and musicians?
Partly, but also kind of I did find that some people's assumptions were based in kind of the opposite side of the media portrayal of mental health problems, which was like, oh, you know, someone's kind of created an incident and they've, you know, for example, kind of stabbed someone, or they've been distraught enough whereby they've kind of, you know, tried to jump in front of a train at a station and things like that. It's the media then paint them as crazy and unstable, and it's like, no, you're like, you have your lows and you kind of have, you know, you have your not so okay and your okay points. That doesn't mean that you are completely unstable. It means that you've hit a low point where you really need some fucking help. And because of kind of like the way that the media portrays kind of like, you know, normal people, the assumption is that, you know, somehow one day, you know, someone like myself is just going to lose my shit and go around and stab people. No, I would never dream of doing that, no matter how fucking shitty I feel or how broken I may be at that point. Obviously, using my own words there. But other people then take that and then assume that of you. Or it's like, you know, terrorism incidents, using the term loosely. Anyone who's white has mental health problems. Anyone who's not white is a terrorist. You know?
God.
And it's like, I'm sorry, but no. I have mental health problems. Not at any point am I going to have a very weird agenda whereby I'm going to try and subject people to abject terror.
Plus, any attack is premeditated. Like, you don't just suddenly have a Bowie knife in your drawer and be like, haha, I know what I can do with this today.
Let's go play.
These things,
No.
and even if you did have a mental illness that predisposed you towards violent acts, you need more fucking help before you ever get to that point. Nobody in their like own full control right mind is going to actually want to do these things.
No.
And actually hurt people. And if they do, then they should be given help. You can't just say, oh, fuck them. Like, they should be given help. Mental health and treatment should be accessible to everyone. And then you do have less of these issues. Like, I'm not going to pretend that mentally ill people have never done anything wrong. But if you actually intervene and help before you get to that point, you're going to have far less of it.
Yeah. I think kind of like the ethos of kind of like so for those again that haven't kind of been to therapy before, therapists will usually kind of like start at least your first session or also with kind of, you know, everything that you say to me is in full confidence. However, if you are a danger to yourself or other people, this is where we get the authorities involved, because then by having that safety point means that you are less likely to do anything damaging to yourself or other people. So, you know, I don't understand why for some people the idea of having mental health issues, even if you're seeking treatment, means that you're suddenly going to swing wildly off the, you know, the piece, when, you know, when you can have those parameters put into place, you can actually get things sorted and still do it in a safe and controlled manner and have action plans whereby if you hit a low point, you know, we have this plan in place, therefore we will do X, Y, and Z, and if we need to, section you.
It's also part of this assumption that everyone with mental health issues is violent. It's very, very specific disorders or health issues that tend to cause violent tendencies. It's very rare for the general populace of people suffering from mental health issues to have violent tendencies. It's honestly, I kind of question where this assumption has originated from, other than the morbid obsession with serial killers, and how that's always been attributed to mental health issues.
Yeah, I think that's the other thing that kind of I get quite irritable about, is the conflation between kind of so can't do words being a sociopath or a psychopath automatically kind of like, you know, you have mental health problems, therefore you're automatically associated with these things. No, those can be personality aspects without having mental health problems. They're not necessarily related.
I do think some of these issues come from the romanticization of mental health, and also the historical misunderstanding. Because I was just trying to think, like, what's one of the earliest things that I can remember, like, reading or seeing that dealt with mental health? And I think it was probably To Kill a Mockingbird, where the character of Boo Radley, who was described as having a childlike mind, basically. So it sounded like he had a developmental disorder and didn't really go out in the day much because he was attacked and, you know, harassed by other people. And so it started to become that he was dangerous and he would hurt children and blah, blah. It was like, no, it was completely the other way around. But this misunderstanding has led into the idea that mentally ill people hurt other people. And that's why, especially when it comes to more complex mental illnesses and conditions like dissociative identity disorder, I can't think of a single piece of media that portrays a person with DID as non-violent or as, well, human. the last representation I saw in film was Split, which I thought was a good horror film, but when you actually applied that they used a real illness in it and said that the the elusive 24th personality was actually a shape-shifting monster, that's you could have just called it anything else and it would have been far more acceptable, but you had to try and bring real life psychology and mental health into it, and instead now you've given the idea that if a person with DID gets pissed off enough they can rip a child in half. Like, that's not helpful to anybody.
Yeah, that film does kind of give the idea of someone with DID automatically has an alternate that they'll automatically have a violent alt.
And
it's
it
like,
annoys
no.
And it annoys me because I think a lot of what that film portrayed and the actor portraying it did a good job for what I know of DID. Like, there were some, much younger alters, there were some older alters, there were different people with different sort of views on the world and different ability, and as far as I can understand from some people that I know, that's a good representation. But then they just fucking threw it in that they turned into an actual monster. And it's like, oh, you were so close. You were so close. But if you're going to have somebody be a legitimate, chaotic monster, don't give them a real life condition. Don't do that.
Yeah.
It's like the people trying to justify the Joker because, he was abused. It's like, yeah, what he still did was horrific. Yeah, cool, it makes for an interesting film. But now you're just kind of giving the idea that a person put upon, like, the Joker is suddenly going to shoot 3 people on a train. Like, no, that was 40 years of abuse with no treatment and no support.
Yeah.
Like, at all.
Sorry, I was going to ask a question and again, it just completely left my mind.
Right, I was ranting a bit about just film representation.
Yeah. Oh, so it was more along the lines of how you deal with addressing mental health in a public space as an advocate. What kind of reception you've had of that?
I'd say as time has moved on, the reception tends to improve over time. I think that's just society's understanding of mental health issues as a whole. I'm really just upfront, honest and frank about it. I don't try and make people uncomfortable, but I know that people might feel uncomfortable with the conversations that I'm having, but I don't want to sound kind of like uncaring when I say I'm not here to mollycoddle other people's feelings. I've always kind of said progress isn't made through comfortable conversations. So if I make you feel uncomfortable by being open about my mental health, that's on you to go away and process. And obviously I don't mean that in the sense of trying to upset anyone or trigger anyone. I just mean kind of like, someone who genuinely has no idea of, ill mental health and is genuinely curious, because then when I answer some of their questions, they kind of go, oh, and I'm like, yeah, this is the reality of living with it. And this is the extra pressure that I put on myself to achieve X, Y, and Z. So yeah, I'm quite frank about it, on stream, online, in person with friends, and I'm quite frank with my colleagues in my day job. I have noticed, particularly since I started the EMDR therapy, I've gotten more forgetful. Now I have, it's kind of been a recent thing that I've gone, oh, okay, so forgetfulness is actually part and parcel of it. It's not just, I have to admit sometimes I'm quite mean to myself, and I'm just like, oh, so it's not just me being thick. It is genuinely kind of like an outward symptom of everything that's going on. So yeah, I've actually started telling my colleagues, like, I'm really forgetful and it's because I've got PTSD, and they're like, oh. There is literally nothing else I can say. If you're going to get irritated with me emailing you the same thing 2 or 3 times because I've forgotten that I've done it or forgetting to do something, I'm going to explain to you why I've not done it. And literally, I just have to go, if you need to, please remind me. I won't be offended if you have to remind me. I sometimes need that assistance. So yeah, a lot of people have been fairly receptive. But I think also because I deliver a lot of kind of things with a sense of humour. A lot of people just tend to giggle along with me rather than at me. I hope it's not at me.
Don't let Brian tell you it's at you.
Okay, just no. No,
Brian. Not today. Not today.
Brian can fuck off. So yeah, for anyone that isn't aware, Brian is also the other thing that you refer to as your brain, because Brian is a dick. Brian needs to shut up. Brian needs to stop telling you all of the mean things, and he can get in the fucking bin.
So there was a film, a Pixar film that's recently come out. I can't remember the actual name of the film though, but basically, like,
was it Inside Out?
No, it was like fish people.
Luca.
Yeah.
Okay, I've not seen that yet.
One of the things that they say is Silencio Bruno. Silencio Bruno. It's basically stop listening to the brain, start listening to everything else. Which I thought was absolutely amazing. Like, salute to that whole Brian is being a dick.
Because I haven't watched it yet, I haven't noted that. So yeah, I'll it's on the to watch list. I'll definitely keep an eye out for that.
Right. Have you experienced any hate or stigma for your mental health advocacy in a public space?
Not to my face, but I'd like to see someone try. Not that I'm mean about it or anything, but yeah, I think mostly I just get people who kind of look surprised or kind of uncomfortable and they just walk away. If it's been in a physical space. Online, again, like, why am I going to pay attention to idiots who, think that trolling is a sport? I have no interest in those people if they tried to target me. Like, well done. Do you want a cookie? But yeah, on the whole, generally, it's quite well received. No one has directly targeted me yet with a particular opinion, but never say never.
And the last question that I've got prepared is how do you support yourself through your mental health journey? What tools and things do you have that you would recommend to others that isn't obviously therapy?
So this is where I admit I'm probably better at advising other people than I am at following my own advice. But for me, it's assessing how I feel at that point in time, because sometimes you can kind of deal with kind of like a dip or whatever, and you can turn it around. By the end of the day, it's you're back on the up, and that was just a small blip. And then there's other times where it will last for days on end. So for me, it's really about assessing kind of how I'm feeling at that point in time and trying to deploy what I feel is the appropriate coping technique. So if I'm feeling a little bit overwhelmed with work, say, or even streaming, I'll just literally go, right, taking a step out for a bit. I'm going to go, cancel stream or just step away from work for half an hour, go do something different. Because kind of mentally, there are times when you can push yourself and there are times where you can't, and only you can assess that. And when you're at that point, then you know yourself well enough, you can judge what you can and can't do at that point. So for me, yeah, usually I'll just take myself off, go do something. Kind of like with work, I've literally got like a stack of colouring books to my right hand side. I've got my knitting somewhere as well. So I kind of like do little kind of like crafty mindfulness things. Or another thing I find quite helpful is Spotify playlist, but of kind of like white noise. So kind of like your bird sounds, your rain noises, your sea noises, that sort of stuff. Because that, again, when you're feeling kind of overloaded, can be quite calming. I sometimes use it to focus for work as well, even if I'm not kind of in the middle of, a meltdown or a bad day. But then there are other days where I'll wake up and I'll just go, oh hell no, and I will just be like, right, today is a bed burrito day. If it's a working day, I'll just message my boss and just go, I'm really sorry, but today's not happening, and just explain kind of what's led to that, and what have you. So it's I feel like I've kind of got, for me personally, I've got quite a lot of tools, and I will kind of say to people, if you find this helpful, or you might find this helpful, maybe give this a try in this circumstance. So yeah, it's kind of, which do you pick on that day at any given point? Sorry, that sounds completely useless, I know.
No, you gave examples of what you use. That's really what I'm trying to get at, is the fact that it's going to be unique to each individual as to what it is that they find calming, relaxing, and removes them from the current situation of pressure or triggering that they're experiencing. Crafts tends to be quite a common one, especially things that occupy hands. But again, it's exploring those options and experimenting that's really the key there. Paige, do you have anything to add? Jump in.
Yes. So, a question from me. So we've talked about sort of representation and how important it is. So one of my favorite questions to ask is always, do you have any favorite positive representations, or not even necessarily positive, but good, like something you agree with or you find to be a good example of either, bisexuality, bi-erasure, mental health, CPTSD specifically, or sort of any sort of representations of things that people could go and watch that you think would be valuable for somebody to learn a bit more from?
Not sure on the PTSD one, I'll be honest. What I usually direct people to is Mind's website. Mind do actually have a good kind of like A to Z of different mental health conditions actually that you can read upon, and they give it both from the perspective of kind of like trying to understand someone with this condition and someone who has the condition and wants to understand more about themselves. So yeah, that's not a video, but I find them quite helpful myself. Yeah, because usually whenever PTSD is depicted, it's usually war zones or some kind of sexual violence. And they're not the only ways that people can suffer from PTSD. I personally know people that have had PTSD from, needing emergency medical care because they were, like their appendix had burst. Sorry, my brain was like spleen, no. Pancreas, no. The other one.
I mean, they'd both be problematic if they burst, so.
Yeah. or kind of like, you know, they've had a huge car accident, or they had I've even known people have PTSD because they've miscarried. So it's not a one size fits all kind of thing. So yeah, sadly for me, the only experience I've had is kind of like in video format, military stuff or sexual violence stuff, which not everyone wants to see, especially if that's been their trigger. In terms of bisexuality, as we mentioned, kind of like Loki and from the boys, Maven. I'm not sure if the character is bisexual or not. But oh balls, what have I been watching recently? Again, this is where the forgetfulness comes in, because I'm like, I can describe the show to you, I just can't remember what it's called.
It's okay. I spent 3 days looking for a game that I remembered from 1995 because I was like, I remember what it's like. I can't remember its name or what it's about or what anyone's called or...
It's like, thanks, brain. Thanks very much.
Yeah. As John just said in the chat, like cat people, but Avatar. That was literally the description that I could remember. It happens. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, the show I'm thinking of, it's on Netflix. Basically, it's like the main character is the Sun Summoner, and what's his face that played Prince Caspian is plays like the black mage in it, or they
Shadow
basically
and
people.
Bone.
That's the one. Thank you. Yeah, one of the characters that's basically trying to do like the con. Like there was just a kind of thing where he was supposed to be like hanging out and trying to help them get into the palace, and then like next thing you know, he's having it off with the stable boy, and I was like, oh, okay, nice surprise. I'm glad that they're just like, you know, there wasn't no this is what his orientation was, it was just fun, and I was like, oh, okay, that's nice to see. But yeah, I'm really bad. I tend to just watch like things like My Hero Academia at the moment, and there's not a lot of bisexual representation in that. I think I really liked now we're going old school here, like original Sailor Moon, because I've not seen the new version. But Saturn and Uranus was quite a good representation for me in terms of non-conventional relationship, and also the fact that now I think it was Saturn, because I always get them both mixed up, but one of them was quite androgynous and probably would now be considered gender fluid. So for me that was kind of quite nice, but then yeah, the English dubbed version turned them into cousins.
Yeah, Pokemon did that a lot as well. Did you know there's actually a transgender character in Pokemon? I think it was Sun and Moon? Because the direct translation of like Black Belt was actually like a male specific term, and so the character in the Japanese basically said, last year I was living as a man and now I'm living as a woman. Life is funny, isn't it? But in the English translation, it just says, last year I was a black belt and now I'm not. And it's like, okay, I get where you're coming from, but I think there was more to that. But yeah, it definitely amused the heck out of me. But things often get lost in translation, which is really annoying.
That, or they are slightly censored. Because, you know, particularly kind of like Western audiences are considered very prim and very Christian. And it's just like that's fine if that's your religion, but you don't need to censor everything just because you have a more conservative view on life. So,
just as an aside, one of my favorites is Hellsing, the anime. Alucard is both male and female. Switches as wishes, will sometime appear as masculine, other times there's feminine, and I love that, and is attracted to whoever, and it's just so normal, and it's brilliant, and I love it. And I mean, for those who know my stream, a lot of my alerts are from Helsing, because I feel like Alucard is like the embodiment of the representation that I want to see. But yeah, that one's a really good one.
I definitely think one of my favorites is the Umbrella Academy, which I think it portrayed people, which I loved, and I still think that the best representation there was Klaus, who is, well, I'd say probably pansexual. But there was just two scenes that I absolutely loved. Like, one of the first times you're introduced to him, he's just been very fucking high and is a bit hungover, and so has just put on a dress that he's found in the house and is just wearing that. And his, technically younger brother walks up and just looks him up and down, and goes, "Nice dress." And he's like, "Oh, thank you." And that's it. There's no mocking. There's no jokes. It's just like, well, that was nice. Like, obviously, you could tell it was a little bit of a pointed joke, but there was nobody else taking the piss out of him for it. It was just a thing. So that was sweet. And then there is, and unfortunately, it is a tragic loss thing, but it does make sense within the story. It doesn't just feel like they're kind of, baiting by killing the gays in the story, but like he does lose a partner in it, and one of his brothers says to him, "Oh, well, she must have been really special," and Klaus just looks back and goes, "He was." And there's just this second of eye contact before it was like, "Well, he must have been very happy to have you then." It was like, yes, that's what we want. Just nobody's being, weirdly homophobic. Like, yes, they made an assumption and immediately changed it. Yeah. Because they got information. Brilliant, beautiful. That's what I want to see. That's a human conversation between people that give a shit. Umbrella Academy was really great. And I do love that the first time I watched an episode was after Elliot Page came out as transgender, and I sat down to watch it, and it said, starring Elliot Page. Immediately. All the titles have been updated. Like, the second that announcement went out, they were updated, and I was like, that's nice. That's a real world thing of actual care. Like, that was damn good. And yes, I know I was a robot for a second, but it just shows, it shows class, and it shows grace and understanding.
So
in many different ways.
We've got one audience question from Kay. What can we do day to day to make life easier for you?
Oh, again, it's kind of like swings and roundabouts. How long is a piece of string? Again, I kind of like, me specifically is probably just check in. Am I all right? If I'm not all right, I'll say. If I am, either way, there will be dialogue. For other people, again, it's how they choose to navigate kind of their mental health, I guess. So yeah, I think, I don't know. Is it an advantage having someone as gobshite as me around? I don't know. So it's like, how are you? Fucking shit.
I love that, to be fair. Like, that is my sentiment entirely. It's like, I hate the whole, how are you? Oh yeah, I'm fine. I'm not fine. I actually answered that to my uncle when he turned up to talk about the fact that my granddad had died the day before. Like, I actually was like, yeah, I'm fine.
Yep.
As baselines go,
It's just the entire concept that it's been drilled into our heads to just be like, oh no, we're not going to bother anyone, we're fine, it's too complicated to answer, yeah, it's shit, or I'm having a bad day, or Sorry.
because
Yeah.
half the time, if a friend asked me how a thing is, I would probably tell them, genuinely. But if a random family member asks me how I am, I'm not going to be like, okay, well, I need to give you 3 years worth of backstory, so let's sit down and start. So it all started about 3 years ago when I fell over, and then it's so much easier to just be like, I'm fine.
Yeah,
like,
I mean, my kind of like slightly less glossy version is like, not exactly, but I suppose I'll be okay. It is my edited version.
I've switched to I'm existing. Because, I mean, if I'm having a good day, I'll tell you I'm having a good day. If I'm having a bad day, but I don't want to bother you with it, I'm going to say I'm existing. And that gives you the option of whether or not you want to find out. But it's also not lying. It's not saying, yeah, I'm fine, I'm great, let's talk about happy things and pretend everything's hunky-dory. It's, I don't know, I've always hated that entire concept.
Yeah, same. I've always been like, well, if I'm feeling like shit, I'm just gonna stay. Maybe this is why people just think I'm odd. Because I'm just like, I can't be bothered with these games.
I think it comes with age. Like,
thanks.
Like the moment that I hit 30, I was just like, fuck this shit.
I think that there actually is some kind of element to that, because there is just a point where you just go, why am I like dancing around in these weird little circles? Why do I give a fuck what anyone else thinks? As my tits head south, why not my personality go north? I don't know why I just said that. I'm just like, whatevs. Hi. All I'll say is good bros.
Right. So we've come to the end of the podcast, unless Paige, you have any more questions, or the audience has any more questions.
I think I'm good on my end.
I'd like to finish off with, have you got any last words for us? Any words of wisdom? Anything you'd like to say?
I will probably just make sure that, those that don't reiterate to themselves it's okay to not be okay, probably should take that on board. There is no shame in having mental health problems. There is no shame in not fitting within a box in terms of your sexual orientation. But yeah, I think kind of like, for me, from my perspective, and something that I'm starting to learn and embrace more every day is like, as long as you're not upsetting anyone else in a negative fashion, if they want to have an opinion on who you are, then they can get in the bin. But just embrace who you are, no matter the kind of aspects of you as a person. So yeah, as some people would say, like, let your freak flag fly, because why hide yourself? There's no point.
I can get behind that sentiment, definitely. Well, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today, Vaine. And as always, thank you, Paige, for hosting with me. I mean, shout outs aren't going to work because the bot's broken.
Rude.
If you could post like the links, Twitch links, then that would be great.
Or if Vaine just posts one of her emotes into the chat, you can use that to link directly to a channel.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Here we go.
There you
Love heart emote.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you all for hanging out with us and listening to us talk shite.
Biggest shite talker here. But yeah, thank you for having me. Talking kind of about the spoons thing before, I did want to say to you both, I really appreciate your patience and dealing with my lack of spoons and forgetfulness combined. So yeah, thanks for having me on.
If there's anything that we know, it's the lack of spoons. But no, do not worry yourself. It was a pleasure having you on. Paige, is there anything that you'd like to say before I do the sign off?
Be good people, and before you try and impress something on other people, try and decide if it's a you problem or a them problem.
Okay. Well, thank you. So thank you all. Next stream will be on Sunday, where we'll be playing some more Final Fantasy. If you'd like to keep in contact outside of stream, do follow us all on the Twitches and the Twitters and the Instagrams. And if you want to hang out outside of the stream, join the Discord, where all the shenanigans happen. But yes, thank you all for joining us. I hope you had a good one. I hope you have a good weekend, and I will see you soon. Say bye all.
Bye-bye.
Bye.